We're going to have more analysis on these U.S.-China relations. We are joined by Ann Lee, economist and author of What the U.S. Can Learn from China. Ann, welcome back to the show. Good to see you. I want to ask you about a couple of things. Vivi talked about a number of priorities. A lot of them are on the economic side. Feel free to talk about which ones that you think are most important that the government should focus on.
Well, the government has already announced they're going to focus on trying to crack down on corruption, trying to strengthen their environmental regulations, and try to also make sure that food safety is a priority, as well as work to close the inequality divide that is becoming dangerous. So I think that they're going to try to tackle all of these things in their term. I think they need to, because there is a high expectation from the population today that they will do this. There's a general feeling in China that Wen Jiabao and Hu Jintao had let them down and that they didn't do the reforms that they had promised. And of course, these reforms are very difficult because there's a lot of political resistance to them. And I think that Xi Jinping had really tried to do the political negotiations in the background before he came to power to ensure that he would have the political support in order to get some of these reforms done, because China really needs them. China has been growing rapidly, but it's clearly slowing down, and some people are worried about that. They need to make sure that there are opportunities in other sectors other than export and infrastructure and real estate in order to continue the economic dynamism. And so they have to actually work on across different fronts.
And I want to ask you, from an outsider looking in on China, this is obviously not the first time that we've talked about reform issues. There's an expectation that there's a new management team there in Beijing, and they're going to be able to push these reforms along further, and perhaps there's some backroom negotiations. But what's a realistic expectations for the markets, for policymakers, as to what to expect on the timeline of these reforms? Is it going to be sooner rather than later, or is it going to take some time?
I would think that all of these things could take some time, because as one of the government officials had said, trying to do these reforms is like basically trying to cut off your own limbs. It's that hard, because the people who have the power are the ones who are benefiting from the status quo. And so to complete these reforms means that you're going to hurt your own interests. And clearly not everyone's going to be on the same page with some of these things. And so it's going to be very delicate. It could be extremely difficult to get some of these things through. And I would not be surprised if some of these reforms are going to just be announced without a lot of debate beforehand, such as a whole real estate policy, taxation, which kind of came as a surprise to some people. I think that this is going to be the way they're going to move forward, because it's going to be so challenging. And
I want to ask you, and you talk to so many people inside and outside of China. What is their feeling as to, is the government moving in the right direction? I mean, everything that we hear, obviously, from the media side, a lot of it comes from the government. But what about the persons and business people and policymakers on the ground? Is everyone in sync, or is there a discussion as to what should be the next focus point?
I think there's a lot of discussion. I don't think there's complete consensus on what's the priority. I think with so many people, you're going to always have different opinions. And like I said, China's economy is large enough that they could operate across the board on different things simultaneously. And so I don't think that only one thing is going to take front and center. It's not like the United States, where they're completely occupied by whether we're going over the fiscal cliff or not. I think that China has structured their government so that they can actually be more effective in trying to operate on different fronts at the same time. And
I want to ask you, how important is this real estate issue? We've talked about this situation before. It's obviously very serious. In your opinion, does this need to be a priority?
I think that this is one of the priorities, yes. because clearly people know that it needed to be corrected. It was clear that a lot of the developers, some of the government people, the wealthy elite got to benefit from this, and it was clearly showing up as a lot of resentment amongst the common people who can't afford to buy into this. And they needed to have laws where they would actually tax these places so that people weren't going to just buy them up and store them like gold bullion in a vault. They need to be used because there are people that could easily fill them up. And so if there was taxes the way the United States tax real estate, then there's incentive for people to move in and to rent them out so that people can move in. And therefore, they would not have a negative carry on the real estate. And this way, it would solve a lot of problems very quickly. And then you wouldn't have a bubble if they did this.
Right.
And so it's right about
certainly a very big
incentives.
issue. Ann Lee, author and economist, joining us from New York Live, helping us better understand the reforms that could take place in China. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.